Welcome to another episode of BX3. I am your host, Dylan Thomas Good, and I would have plugged in my bass, but it kind of wreaks havoc with my microphone pack, so it's probably best if I don't. I'll do more bass for you some other time. But needless to say, as you can tell, we're going to be talking about music today and lyrics and how they all kind of influence literature, and literature influences music and all that type of thing. So needless to say, we've got our books, we've got our booze, which is a delightful cherry brandy, and I've got my boots on, as you might not be able to see, but there you go. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it because we got a lot to talk about, and this is actually going to be the first in 2 parts, I believe. And next month we'll be talking more about poetry, and of course that has overlap with lyrics. But let's go ahead and get it started. Join me. A lot of people have actually asked me, when they find out that I'm a musician, they ask, what's your favorite music book or whatever, that has to do with a literary type of thing, mixing the two together. And I know a lot of people my age would say High Fidelity, I believe is by Nick Hornby, but actually, which is a fun idea, and he definitely deserved a lot of credit for that. But I think if I had to pick one that really influenced me, and it really made me feel good as a reader, and all those prerequisite things that it takes to recommend a book, I would have to say Roddy Doyle's The Commitments, which is right over here. There it is. So, yes. And it's about a group of about a dozen ragtag Dubliners who are tired of living in squalor and depressing prospects, and they decide to put together a band. And the band that they put together is actually an R&B band, and so they play a lot of old 60s Motown stuff, Otis Redding and Joe Tex and Four Tops, and all these types of things that really were the backbone of rock and roll as we know it these days. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful story. Very vivid characters, and the music is wonderful because it just jumps off the page at you. Roddy Doyle has a magnificent way of culling down the necessary dialogue and letting kind of the music and the action do the talking. When you go back, it's a very short read, as you can see. It's a very thin book. So it's not very long at all, but he packs a lot of punch into those little pages because, like I said, there is such a great love of the music and a great exploration of that. And of course, with something like this, you've got the men versus women type of thing, and women feel that they're not represented properly or in an equal way. There's infighting, sex comes in and kind of buggers up the mix. So there's a lot of issues that surround the band and all the things that they're trying to achieve. And I won't tell you the ending, but Alan Parker, who did so many films like Mississippi Burning and Fame and Pink Floyd The Wall, and just so many really, really great films. Angel Heart was another one of my favorites of his, but he directed a 1991 film version of it, and that's an absolute hoot too, and so you definitely need to check that out. It's just as good as the book. But yes, so if you want a fantastic music read in fiction, get Roddy Doyle's The Commitments. Speaking from my own experiences, I do realize that putting music into a book the way that Roddy Doyle did with Commitments sometimes poses a problem. And I have first-person experience with this. About 5 years ago, I wrote a book called Wolf. And I had numerous music quotes in it because one of the main characters was a musician and had a really, really great love of music. But the problem was my publisher didn't have the money to get clearance for the lyrics. And so in the 11th hour, I had to do a very, very cleansing edit of the book. Ultimately, it didn't dilute the emotional impact of the book, but in a perfect world, I wish I could have retained that, because I lost a few funny scenes and insightful scenes and interplay between certain characters because I didn't have the lyrics to base them on. And so that was a little disappointing, but I'm hoping to somehow remedy that in the future one way or another. I'm currently looking for possible publishers to reprint Wolf, and I've written a screenplay. So if, God willing, the screenplay actually gets produced, it will be something that, the music element of the script is definitely in the forefront as well, and it's been written in a very same construct as the novel was, and so the music is definitely front and center. And so if Wolf ever does make it to the screen, then hopefully we'll have some of those elements reintroduced back into my work. But yes, that is one of those issues that does crop up, because let's face it, lyrics cost money. Let's face it, poetry has a lot in common with lyrics, and so there's definitely interlap and overlap and entrelap and all that wonderful made-up terms that I just created that exist within those two media. Even some singer-songwriters, such as Patti Smith or Bob Dylan, are revered as poets separately, even by scholars. The big question, though, is whenever you're a songwriter, do you write the lyrics first and write the melody around it, or vice versa? Do you try to then graft words onto an existing melody? Most songwriters would tell you that the lyrics come last, so to speak. As a musician, and if you're using that as your main creative outlet, you're going to concentrate on the melodic element rather than the lyric element. And so that is something that would take less importance to a songwriter, because it's all about getting that certain chord in your head, or those 64 bars that you thought up sitting there, waiting for the dentist. It just, you got to get it out, and you got to get that written, and so that always seems to take precedence with the vast majority of writers. But there are other ways, though, that you can sort of get words in there. I mean, let's face it, someone like Al Yankovic has spent his entire career stapling new lyrics onto an existing melody. So he's done quite well in that respect, because everybody loves Weird Al. But then there's also the strange little thing where the words actually become the melody. Look at something like "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel, and how he rapidly goes through all these little phrases that build from between 1949 to 1989, I believe, and it's just very, very, very rapid fire. It's one after the other, all these little terms. It doesn't matter if it's talking about Marilyn Monroe or Psycho or the Cola Wars or whatever, all these strange little things that happened in the world back within that 40-year span. It actually becomes the melody, or lack thereof. Billy Joel, I know, says he hates the melody for that song, but it was a hit nonetheless. But you have to admire the fact that he did something very different. Yes, it doesn't have the melody of something, Bach would have made, but it was catchy, and it was something that ended up being very commercial and successful. So in and of itself, you can't say that it was a failure in any respect. I think that poetry has, for the most part, has become less of an influence than the other way around. I think that existing art is a conduit or a catalyst for the new stuff, as opposed to the other way around. But there is an example of poetry standing in for lyrics or acting as lyrics. I mean, something like Auld Lang Syne, which we sing every New Year's Eve for whatever reason. It's not a song I care for, but that was actually a poem. And it was sort of not exactly written by Robert Burns, the famous Scottish scribe, but it was kind of interpreted by him, and it was sort of, co-opted for a different purpose, for poetry's sake. And then, like I said, they, to all acquaintance be forgot, and so they then layered on this this melody to it, and it's become one of the most instantly recognizable melodies in the history of mankind. So, when it goes that other way like that, it can hit big, and I believe that's traditional now. It's a public domain type of work, but that it really does make sense in that respect. I tend to think of poetry as its own thing rather than the outcropping of another medium. I mean, let's face it, all art is influenced by all other art or happenings in the world, and everything. And we as writers or painters or sculptors or whatever artistic medium you work with, we just sort of pluck these little inspirations out of the world and push them together into a new tapestry. And because the old adage is probably true that everything has already been thought of. There are only so many words, there are only so many notes, there are only so many ways you can arrange said notes and words. And so we after 2,000 years here have sort of run out of original ideas, and it's somewhat disconcerting, especially when you're looking at, for instance, the movies, and all we've had are remakes and sequels and superhero movies. That's it. That's all we get anymore, because it's brand recognition. It's a name that people recognize, and so it's easier for people to say, okay, we're going to put $100 million into something that is a very well-known comic book, because we have a much better chance of making our money back than something that's original that we're going to take a jump on and really risk our ass in the entire studio's backing to make something that has never been made before. I mean, it's when you're looking at it in the bottom line, it's show business. It's a business. They're there to make money, and that's the reason why that you have that type of thing. But there's a lot of folks who retract from that, and one of them was Jean de Sainte-Colombe. And Jean de Sainte-Colombe was a master musician back in the late 17th century. He actually created a musical instrument, which was the viol, or the gamba, I believe is what it was called. And he actually added a 7th string. And let me tell you, I've played 4-string viola, or cello, excuse me, and it's just as bad, as playing a 4-string instrument this way. It's difficult, especially when you have small hands like I do. But playing 7 strings, fuck all, man. I don't want to even get into that. I mean, I've played you know, classical guitar with 6 strings, and it's like, I don't want to do 7 strings, thank you very much. You know, I only have so much hand. But, but it's amazing that someone back literally 350 years ago was able to construct this type of instrument and make it just sound so wonderful and influence hundreds of years of music after that because of these designs that he did. One of the things that have been based on his life was a book called Tous les matins du monde, which translated means All the Mornings of the World. And that was written by, let me check my notes, totally forget. It was written by, Pascal Quignard, that's it. Pascal Quignard wrote that, and it was in the early 90s. And it was later, not too long later, was turned into a film of the same name with Gerard Depardieu. And I saw this film in the early 90s, and it really made a big impact on me. So much so that I actually wrote a poem about this man. And it's called The Mossy Green Water. And it basically proposes what an elderly Jean de Sainte-Colombe would have done as he took his instrument outside and played for his wife up in heaven, who had passed away and left him behind. And for the first time ever, live, I am just now going to read you The Mossy Green Water. So, here we go. Gotta wet my whistle first. In the book, Swimming in Seine, available now, I have sort of a write-up that leads into this that I'll give it to you here. It says, there is love, and then there is a type of love that can only come from someone left behind after their true love has passed away. In the case of composer Jean de Sainte-Colombe, we can surmise that the resultant devotion that comes after death may be the only thing that never truly dies. And so, here we go. This is called The Mossy Green Water. The walks take no time, and the anticipation of you with me makes it all glide at our sides. I can see Cassiopeia through your eyes tonight, when I look up and might almost feel the timbers that will frame this always in memory. You've been gone in body for years, yet I still find traces here and there of you down at the pond. It seeps through my palms like a stigmata, and I could keep you forever in times just like these. I've perfected the bowing, the 7-string tuning, and the criminal thought that I'd wander out into the mossy green waters to play for you tonight. Though you've not aged, I have, and the viol seems larger, more ponderous as time is now the only one to whom I speak. When the sticks and leaves surface, I sometimes pray that they were your fingers rising and taking me like a succubus in your embrace. The quarter notes carry the pack, like a yearling foaming, hoping you can hear them wherever you are. That place I'd join you, if only you'd tell me where. Remember, I've grown old, my playing has spent me, and my calves would sob if I had to trek back to my nothingness. The icy linger of the pool has taken me ankle deep, so can't you wash over and complete this end in the damming of our distance? As I've done before, I look up again at the hollow and the quiet of the cabin. I frequently leave this place, but no longer need to try. I found the walks with you take no time tuning to perfection, freshening a frothy bow, or needing that touch of the mossy green waters to know why my elder spirit instances will never stop trying in body for the reaching to your ears. And that is The Mossy Green Water. And if you'd like that, I have a book called Swimming in Seine. It's one of 2 poetry books that you can find on Amazon or at my wonderful website, which is www.dylanthomasgood.com. And that is our little talk about music this week. The next time that you'll be joining me will be to study more of the poetry end. We kind of dovetailed into that here at the end. And I want to pick back up and focus entirely on poetry because it has so many interlocking parts with lyrics and music and all that type of thing. I really see the value in putting these two together. So keep rocking, folks, and I'll see you again next time. Take care. So hold on just a second. I got a boogie.